One of the oldest conversations in the Dragon Ball community that fans have literally been talking about for decades is what if Captain Ginyu stole Frieza's body? And in today's video we will explain exactly why Captain Ginyu didn't do it, the chances that he would succeed trying to do it, and if he somehow did, what would he actually do in Frieza's body? Now, the first thing that we have to talk about is that Dragon Ball Xenoverse brought up a very interesting idea years ago with Captain Ginyu. And essentially, there's a lethal combination where Guldo can essentially freeze time, but make the time frozen specifically to a point where Frieza can't move, literally, because it doesn't matter how strong Frieza is. If you freeze time, you freeze time. And if Ginyu is still movable and conscious during this, then he could essentially just switch bodies with Frieza right then and there. And the interesting thing about this topic, guys, is that there is a little nugget of information if you look at the Kanzenju forums. Years ago, somebody posted a translation of the Daishenzu 7, which gives a hint as to why Captain Ginyu never stole Frieza's body. And essentially, if we go back and we read it, we get a line that basically says that Captain Ginyu was one of the very few people who pure-heartedly revered Frieza. This is directly giving us a little bit into Captain Ginyu's mindset, and basically explains that the reason why Captain Ginyu never attempted or stole Frieza's body is simply because of the fact that he really worships him and truly reveres him as an individual. And because of this and his respect for Frieza himself, and the fact that Frieza obviously gave him a pretty good life relative to most people because he put him in charge of the Ginyu Force and he's his top guy, as a result of this is why Ginyu never did it, because he simply just has an alien crush on Frieza. Now, the thing that we have to understand about this specifically, guys, is that would it actually work on Frieza if Guldo was not around? Now, like I said, assuming that obviously Ginyu could still move and like Guldo could control the frozen time for a certain individual, the interesting thing here is that if he were to attempt it on Frieza individually, it would have absolutely no chance of success for one simple reason. Even though earlier in the Namek arc, Burter basically made the claim that he was the fastest in the universe, it's pretty obvious based off of how Frieza performed against Vegeta and Goku, who were far beyond Burter in speed by that point. Frieza's clearly the fastest in the universe, particularly at that particular point in time, and as a result of that, we can clearly say that just based off of speed alone, combined with the fact that Frieza is aware of Captain Ginyu's ability. So as a result of this, even though Frieza trusts him as his top guy, it's pretty obvious that it wouldn't work on a character like Frieza. And the only way that it would work would be the whole Guldo combination that we saw hinted at in Dragon Ball Xenoverse. There's something else that we also have to talk about here. What if he actually did somehow succeed in taking Frieza's body? If he were to steal Frieza's body, he wouldn't really know what to do with Frieza's body, considering that Frieza has totally different forms. I mean, he has his base form, which is like his suppressed form, and then he has like the King Cold form, as fans like to call it. Then he has the Xenomorph form, and then he has his final or real form, and then the 100% version of that. So when you think about how many depths there are to Frieza's power, on top of the fact that Frieza knows how to bring out his power so much, and Ginyu struggled to bring out Goku's power, and Goku obviously has ways to bring it out by powering it up, and obviously using Kaioken, but Goku doesn't have legitimate transformations the way that Frieza does, where his body completely morphs. As a result of that, and the complexity of the body that Frieza has as compared to Goku, because of the actual physical changes that are required for Frieza to transform, Ginyu would really struggle to bring out even a fraction of Frieza's power, and in all likelihood, he would probably just stay in Frieza's base form, because he would think that that's probably the best that he could ever get. But then this brings up a really interesting question. What would Ginyu now do with Frieza's body? When you look at a character like Captain Ginyu, it just seems like he's not fit for controlling a massive intergalactic empire, and I feel like at a certain point there would be either some type of revolt or the control over Frieza's empire would just break apart, because people wouldn't have the same fear for Ginyu the way that they had for Frieza. Now, this is also dependent on something else too, because if Ginyu still has Frieza's body, maybe the Empire would think, well, maybe this is actually Frieza and they don't actually know that it's Captain Ginyu, and if the Empire is not aware that Frieza's body was stolen and they actually think it's actually Frieza and his voice just somehow changes, well then we have a totally different situation where they would still respect Frieza, and obviously because of how powerful Ginyu is, then he would still be able to maintain control. And at the same time, I also feel that he doesn't have Frieza's ambitions of trying to acquire Dragon Balls to wish for eternal youth. I feel like Ginyu would wish for something silly if he ever even had the chance to wish for something. But considering the fact that Ginyu would require the Namekian password to basically get usage of the Dragon Balls in the first place, he would never be able to make a wish on Planet Namek. And in terms of Planet Earth, I mean, I guess it's possible, but we also have to measure at that point how exactly would Ginyu be able to get to Earth and learn about the Earth Dragon Balls and all of the information, because it was Frieza who spied on the Saiyans when they were on planet Earth. Now, if he did it around the time of the Namek arc, our heroes would have a very good chance of defeating Captain Ginyu, considering the fact that he would have had a seriously hard time controlling his body, and the moment that Goku or Vegeta or even Gohan got a significant Zenkai boost like they got on that planet and healed from it, then even with Frieza's body, Ginyu would have been in a lot of trouble, because if Frieza's power was 530,000 in his suppressed form, it's unlikely that Ginyu would know how to transform in Frieza's body, and they would eventually overpower him, and basically the Ginyu Force would be stopped there. Now let's propose another scenario where Ginyu steals Frieza's body much earlier. In all likelihood, at some particular point, what would have happened is that King Cole would have realized that Ginyu was in Frieza's body because he knows his son better than anybody else, and he would have noticed weird changes of his behavior. And if King Cole is aware of this, he would have killed Ginyu in Frieza's body right on the spot. Even though this would have been quite weird because, obviously, Frieza's his son, so he would be killing, essentially, his son's body, which I'm sure as a father that would be a very weird thing for King Cole to have to do. Now, there is an alternate scenario of this, where Ginyu basically just steals King Cole's body, and considering the fact that Ginyu would have stolen Frieza's body in his suppressed form, then clearly King Cole would have been an upgrade, and if he completely took King Cole's body, it's kind of weird because from a physical point of view, King Cole actually looks rather similar to what Ginyu kind of looks like in his previous body, because obviously that's not his real body, because I always brought up the joke, how do you practice a body change? You clearly have to do it on somebody else, and clearly Ginyu just stole some powerful alien's body from a long time ago. But the point that we're getting at here is that, based off of what we were reading from the Daisenju, in all likelihood, he most likely wouldn't have, because he has respect for Frieza, and obviously, if Ginyu has respect for Frieza, then he would also have respect for a character like King Cole, and because of all of these reasons, he wouldn't even think to attempt of doing such a thing, considering that Frieza gave him a much better life than he would have ever have had, as he's basically the #1 henchman of all of Frieza's goons. Now, as opposed to that, we are going to mention an interesting contradiction when it comes to Captain Ginyu, and this is essentially the fact that he has displayed a strong sense of honor before when he was fighting against Goku and Jace fired an energy blast at him, and Goku obviously dodged it, which gave Ginyu the opportunity to grab onto him. It's at this moment where Ginyu could have made a choice to either severely injure Goku or kill him, but he let him go because he thought this was essentially cheating, but it's just kind of ironic considering that Captain Ginyu's signature move is to essentially steal other people's bodies that are stronger than himself, which is the total opposite of what you would expect from a fighter that's supposedly displaying a strong sense of honor on the battlefield.